Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Josh.
and this is the Bad at Magic podcast, and welcome to episode 25.
Episode 25. This is a big one because we as humans, we have 10 fingers, so we have a base 10 number system. So 100 is very important, which makes 50 important, which makes 25 very important, and it ends in 5. Like there's a lot of people that are very happy about 25 right now.
Yeah, this is also significant because there are 26 sets of 2 weeks in a year, and we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary, but we'll talk more about that at the end of the podcast.
Oh, thank you for the warning. Now I have 2 weeks to get you something.
Right now, I want to talk about something that you said last time, and it's you and I do this from time to time. Where like we remember, we've been friends for so long that we remember something. And I remember back when you were single before you were married, and you said something to me way in the past. And last week you said the opposite to me, and I wanted to make sure you knew about this. So here's what happened. Last week you said to me when we were talking about mobile gaming and whatever, pay to win kind of gaming, where like if you don't pay, they aren't getting any money. So shouldn't you pay so that you pay for the game they've created? And you said, I will choose not to pay and let other people pay so I can have the gaming experience. Now I remember about 10 years ago while you were unmarried, you said the exact opposite to me. You said, Ben, I'm a consumer. I buy things and I keep the economy going. So I just wanted to check with you and make sure you knew that you'd kind of reversed your position on that.
So let me try to justify my seeming hypocrisy. Okay, so I think this has it's a two-factor equation. I think the first one being that the intention of the software that I'm consuming has changed. So, for example, I recall clearly, like I had a pop-up blocker back in the day back when you needed those before they were just part of your web browser. I had a third-party program that would pop all those annoying pop-ups. And when I installed it, they asked like, "Hey, we make this for free. We're not asking for anything, but if you enjoy it, you can support it here." And there was a link, and you could go donate, any like $1 to $10 through PayPal. And
Yeah.
I remember specifically, I gave them $5 because I had used that pop-up blocker for years. I'm like, you know what, this guy deserves my money. He's not after anything. He's just genuinely making the world a better place. Now, with
Wait, wait,
this
wait. Are you the only guy on Earth that ever actually paid for WinRAR?
no, okay, so I don't think I ever paid for WinRAR. I think I just waited that one out. Now, zip functions are all part of Windows now, so we don't have to
Right,
worry
right.
about it. Um, dang it, Ben.
But now
But
you
yeah, now the free to play games, like the intention is different. Like the publisher is not putting out software and asking us to support it on just because they put out such a great product. Like we hope you guys enjoy it, so pay us money. It is a Skinner box. Like it's free to download. You don't have to pay anything to download it initially, and then every mechanism inside the game is built to extract real world dollars out of my pocket. And so like it's almost like I'm playing a game and then I'm playing the game outside of the game, where it's like, how long can I play this game and dodge all of the traps and the things that they build in where I have to pay them money? So that's the
yeah.
first thing. And I think the intention of the software has changed. And the second one is just pure economic responsibility. Like back when we first met and I was 20 something, living the single life in my bachelor apartment where I had nothing but a couch and a coffee table. Like, yeah, I had disposable income coming out of every orifice and just like dropping those mad dollar bills on Magic the Gathering and all these other nerd things.
Yeah.
Now, with a wife and kids, Ben, like it's tough. Like I had to
Yeah,
save
yeah.
for a while to get for my new computer. I can't be dropping, $2,000 or $3,000 into a free to
This
play game.
this deserves a pie chart. I need to make a pie chart of like your income pre-marriage and post-marriage and how it transforms. I did this once with my free time when I was at home versus when I was deployed, and where all my time went in a given week.
I remember that pie chart. I remember it because like you had spent so long like analyzing the data that there was a sliver of the pie chart that was analyzing your time. And so like
That's a self-licking lollipop.
yeah, exactly. All right, well, while you're following up, I want to do some follow up too.
Okay.
So last episode, you asked me about Hamilton, and we had my wife and I had watched it, and I made the recommendation that I'd encourage you to watch it, but I would encourage everybody to watch it, and I said I'd probably never watch it again. So my question to you is, did you watch Hamilton in the intervening time?
No, but no, but I didn't intend to, but something happened. My 14-year-old son, who loves drama and theater, came to me and asked me to watch it with him in a way that's very unlike him. He's my passive aggressive child. He's the one that, like, if he wants me to do something, he'll like, let's say for instance he wants me to make spaghetti for dinner. He'll come in the kitchen, kind of under his breath, he'll stare at the ground and kick his foot and go, "I guess no one's gonna make spaghetti anyway." Like, that's his way of telling me that he wants spaghetti for dinner.
Very Eeyore, sad sack like.
Yeah. Okay. So, but he didn't do that. He came straight to me. He was really excited. He's like, "Dad, Hamilton's on Disney Plus. We should watch as a family. It would be so great." I was like, "Okay, I got to do this because I adore him and I don't get chances to show him how much he means to me very often. And he's very clearly signaled to me he wants to do this." So we're still on vacation. I haven't had a chance yet, but I totally intend to. So probably before the next time we talk, I will have watched it.
Okay, good. And I wanted to follow up with this for another reason. So I told you that, like, I watched it. It was fine. I enjoyed it, but I probably wouldn't watch it again.
Uh-huh.
Well, since then, like, I've been teleworking at home, and Nicole's computer setup is, like, right next to me, and she does her homework there for 2 or 3 hours a day. And in the intervening couple of weeks, we have listened to the Hamilton soundtrack, not just like songs out of it, but the entire thing as if it was running on Disney Plus in the background on our computers from start to finish, no less than 3 times.
Okay.
It's, I don't even know how to justify it. Like, the music just kind of got into us. And so, like, we'd find ourselves both humming the same song from the musical, and just finally we would just give up and turn it on YouTube and keep working.
Yeah. I've done this throughout my life with certain musicals. Probably the most recent one was Matilda the musical, which I highly recommend, especially if you ever go to London. If any of my listeners, if you've ever planned a trip to London, go to the West End and watch Matilda on the West End. It is the most phenomenal stage production I've ever seen. It was the highlight. Probably my mom came and spent 2 weeks in England, and that was her favorite thing.
You know, Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, Stonehenge, skip all that, people. We're talking about
go see Matilda on the West End. Yeah. I mean, it's like going to Broadway and seeing Book of Mormon. You know, just something that's famous and big and very characteristic of the place you are. I mean, it's based on a book by Roald Dahl, who is one of the most famous British authors.
Okay. You've sold me. If I ever go to London, which is not going to happen, I will go see Matilda at the West End.
Yes. And the kids will love it too. All right. So speaking of kids, let's talk some bad at parenting.
Bad at parenting. So I put some notes in for the show about bad at parenting because I wanted to ask you a question. Okay. Father of infinite children and dispenser of parental wisdom. So my daughter, who is just so adorable, she is 5.
She is
5?
adorable.
1, 2. Yeah, she's 5. I'm confident that she's 5.
Okay.
If I have to retract that next episode, my wife's really going to be upset with me. But I'm confident that she's 5. And she has like a cute little New Jersey or East Coast accent. And we have no idea where this came from. Like, we live in Arizona. That? We have like the most neutral way of speaking that I'm aware of. But my daughter, for some reason, has this Jersey accent. And so, it's super cute when she does stuff. Like, for example, like my son's name is Carter. And she says, "Carter. Give me that back, Carter. Let's go play Carter." You named your son a
New Jersey name to begin with.
Oh, it's our fault. You're right. That's what happened. Hospital. She says, she can't say hospital. She says hopstable.
Oh, man. That's really cute.
Yeah. This leads me to my question. At what point does it stop being cute and it's just now a speech impediment? Because, like, somewhere between, like, 5 and 25, like, it's just, that's not the right word. You need to say it differently. But I don't know where that line is. Like, should I start correcting her now and working on her enunciation? Or is this something I can let it go for a few years?
So, first of all, I could totally sympathize with what you're talking about. I think every parent goes through this. I hear my siblings say it. I heard my parents say it. You have your kids, and they're little, and these little funny idiosyncrasies they have in their speech are cute. Like, it's just, you like it. And it's kind of symbolic of them being young. And here's what's going to happen, Josh, because your daughter's a normal child. She's going to grow out of it. Definitely before she turns 25. I don't know what the right number is. It's probably before she's 10, somewhere between 5 and 10. At some point, either she's going to get mocked by schoolmates about it, and she'll figure it out on her own, or just one day she'll realize she's saying it wrong, have developed the sufficient cognitive and physiological development to fix it herself, and a little part of you will die inside. It's
Like,
really sad.
I want my tiny Jersey girl back.
I know. My family, it's such a sad thing that we cling to them. Like, my kids at certain times have all had trouble saying words like that. Like, for instance, my oldest son couldn't say the word table. He would say table. So we still call it a table. He stopped doing it, but we wanted to keep it going.
Right, the table with the V.
Yeah,
That's funny.
My second daughter, she couldn't say OR sounds, like, so if something fell on the ground, she would say it fell on the floor, or if she wanted to go through the portal in between rooms, she called it the dur. So we still call it the table, the floor, and the dur.
Oh, and that's a slippery slope though, because soon enough you're talking like some weird like deep South family in the middle of Michigan.
Those are the family inside jokes, but it's nice. I miss it. But of course, she's 12 now. I don't want her to still call it the fleur and the dur. And of course, she says it right. But if she was 12 and still calling it that, I would get her speech therapy, I guess.
No. Boo. Okay, well, you've made me feel a little better. Like, I'll give it a few more years and see if she grows out of her accent.
But you guys will probably still call your son Quada. Or,
Quada? Oh, yeah.
Or the Hopstipple.
The Hopsible. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Those are the inside jokes that, like you were talking about. Like, they just go forever, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm on leave. The military finally figured out they're crap enough to like authorize leave, and then they took it back the day after they approved my leave. So I didn't bring it up. I just came out here. I'm out in Utah with my parents and my siblings, and just seeing everybody and getting my son settled for college here. And I'm in his bedroom he's going to live in while I'm back in Illinois, and I'm in Utah right now. Anyway, while we were here, we went up Provo Canyon, up along the Provo River, and it reminded me of something that happened 12 years ago when he was 8.
Oh, is this just Ben Rich story time, or is this?
Yeah, this is my bad at parenting moment.
Oh, it's a bad at parenting story. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm on board. All right. Let's hear it.
So we went up Utah Canyon with my sister one day to have an adventure. She's like, let's take the kids and go tubing down the Utah River. It's a nice, calm river. It'll be a fun adventure. We got all these tubes in this canoe, and we'll go out. I'm like, okay. My mom will take the baby.
Wait, how long ago was this?
In 2008.
2008. So like, what were your kids' ages at the time?
I had 4 kids. There was a 3-month-old baby, a 2-year-old.
Nope. No, yeah, I'm already stop. You can stop the list right there. Completely logistically untenable. You're not taking a 3-month-old onto
okay. So
the
3-month-old one, my mother, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And I have a philosophy, Josh, and I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but when you have 6 kids, you can't make decisions about what kind of adventures to have based on the youngest child, or the oldest child will never do anything. So sometimes you have to do something where you're kind of stretching yourself a bit, doing something that's a little bit tough to do with a 2-year-old, and you probably wouldn't do it if you only had a 2-year-old, but the 8-year-old gets to have an adventure.
Okay, I get that, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the logistics of taking an infant and a 2-year-old onto a river.
Okay, we didn't take the infant on the river. So the baby went with my mother. So there was my sister, her friend, my brother, my wife, and I. 5 grown-ups and 4 children.
He lost count.
5 grown-ups and 4 children, and a dog. All going to go. Going to go on the river.
Again, already more logistical problems.
My sister ridiculous. Is inseparable from her dogs. I cannot help this. She has adventures. She brings her dogs. So there were 10 of us. We had 4 tubes and a canoe. So we got there, and we're making sure everybody's safe. We're putting on sunscreen and life jackets, and we're looking at the river, and it's moving, 4 or 5 miles an hour, pretty swift, but not terribly so. It's like a fast walk pace, maybe a jog kind of pace. And it's cold, but we don't plan to get in the water. So she says, I've heard that children float downstream faster than adults. So if you both tipped out of the tube, you would get separated. So I said, okay, we'll tie everybody together. So we had some rope, and we tied all the children to a accompanying grown-up.
So wait, did you tie everybody together, or was just everybody was paired off?
No, I had the 2-year-old, My wife had the 4-year-old, and then the 6-year-old was just in a tube with my sister, and the 8-year-old was in a tube with my brother.
So everybody just had their life jacket accountability buddy.
Yeah. And then my sister's friend was in a tube by herself. She was the only one by herself. And then the dog was supposed to be in the canoe with us, but as we were trying to get in the river, it kept jumping out of the canoe to be with my sister. And she's like, that's not going to do. So we're going to tie the dog into the canoe. So we tied the dog's leash into the canoe.
All right, so I'm laughing because every step of this process is just adding one more like pain in the butt thing that you're having to deal with.
I know. So
go ahead.
We go to the edge of the water. We're about to put in 4 tubes in a canoe, and we saw immediately, like, as soon as one person got in, they would whoosh away, and we would all get separated. So we were like, how about we just tie everybody together? We got this one long rope, so we'll tie it to the cross member in the canoe, and then run it through the handles of the first 3 tubes and tie it to the 4th tube. So we just created this big, long chain of humans and animals.
How much rope did you have? Like, just handy.
That's the thing I wonder when I retell this story. I'm like, where did I get all this rope from? I don't know. I had a bunch of rope. It was just
Did you have like climbing gear and stuff too?
Baling twine or something. No, you're imagining the wrong kind of rope. It's just like little nylon cord.
I know you were an Eagle Scout, but man, you take that always prepared stuff to the brink, don't you?
Well, okay. Well, this is bad at parenting. So I thought I'd anticipated everything, but I'd never actually done this before. So we got into the water, and the tube started to float ahead of the canoe, and the canoe was last and kind of being towed behind. It was less buoyant and a little bit heavier. So as we got going in the water, that's the way it was. The tubes are strung ahead of us, and we were behind it. And we'd only just gotten into the river, and the river took a 90-degree turn, and immediately after the turn, there was a bridge that went over the cross of the river, and it had 3 pylons that went down into the water. And as soon as we rounded this corner, and I spied this bridge, I was like, oh no.
And you're all tied together.
We are going to straddle one of these pylons. So I said to my wife, you have got to paddle faster. We have got to get around this pylon because right now they're going to go on one side and we're going to go on the other. I don't remember what I actually said, but I'm like, we got to go. So I'm paddling as hard as I can. And we're coming at this bridge at 4 miles an hour. It's just whooshing right up on us. And it happens. We straddle the pylon. The 4 tubes go on one side of the pylon. The canoe goes on the other side of the pylon. The rope pulls taut, and it drags the canoe down, and it submerges under the water.
Oh, no.
And, fills with water, and the canoes and the tubes all stay around, and the tension of the rope, basically like Cheerios on a string, if you just took your fingers and push them, and they just push them all together. And then people everywhere, and dogs and animals. So of the 10 of us, 3 were immediately thrown clear, and the rest were entangled in all the ropes.
Oh, jeez.
It was a disaster.
So I was I was laughing at first, but like expecting some National Lampoon comedy sketch where everybody like the rope, like you said, the rope goes taut and everybody just kind of goes flying, has a good laugh, and keeps going. But this sounds like it was like worse than that. Like it sank the canoe.
It started to become life-threatening. So the canoe capsized, and my wife and the 4-year-old were thrown clear, and then past the bridge, the river widened out and it shallowed, and she got to her feet and started going to shore. My oldest son was thrown clear, and I think my sister's friend picked him up and set him on the shore, and then came back to try to help, while the rest of us were all entangled in the ropes. So I was tied to the 2-year-old, and I kind of tried to get out from underneath the canoe, and I was tangled up in it, and all I could see was a rope attached to me and no 2-year-old.
Oh, no.
Because I was kind of tangled in the canoe, and the tension of me and the water rushing forward pulled him under. So I grabbed the rope and just start pulling it until I get to the end of it with a child and pull out a 2-year-old gasping for air.
Oh, my goodness.
So also in the canoe is the dog, who's also tied by a rope, and she is ahead of the canoe and completely submerged by the same problem. And I'm holding this 2-year-old, and I'm looking at this dog that's about to drown, and I'm thinking, I have to save this human first.
I'm right there with you. Like, sorry, dog, but when push comes to shove, you're basically food.
Right. So I get us untangled from the canoe, and we're both on one side of the pylon. And so my wife and daughter were thrown clear. I've got my son. We kind of float down the river and get out, and I set my son on the shore, and then I turn around. And in the meantime, my brother and son are still kind of tangled in the pylon on the bridge, but they're out of the water. They're not in danger, but they need to be rescued. And my sister and her friend were able to get clear. So Now we only have 2 humans left and a dog. And by this time, some bystanders have come to help him. Before it was all said and done, 3 strong men came to help us, and we needed it. Because on the far side of the bridge, the water was deep and rapid, and it was hard to get back to where the scene of the accident was and rescue the other people. So we got my brother and my son clear, and everyone was free and on the shore, and we're standing there looking at the dog who's drowning. And it felt like forever. I have no idea how long it was, but the dog would just barely be able to come up and gasp for air every now and then go back under. And it just looked like a rock in a river with water rushing over the top of it.
Oh, jeez.
So,
Ooh.
And I'm standing on the shore thinking I don't want to endanger anyone else's life, and I'm thinking the dog's going to die.
I mean, that sucks. You had 3 strong men came and helped, but like, everybody's okay? Like
one of the guys muscled his way up the river to the canoe and was able to get the harness off the dog and get it out and took us out. And we're all staying on the shore, gasping for air after 100 yards of our adventure, and we were done for the day. That was it. No more rafting, no more tubing. The tubes were all flat and broken. The canoe went down the river without any people. I think we were able to recover it, but that was it. That was. What a parenting disaster. I didn't foresee the danger. The things I thought we were doing to make us safer made it worse, and it was horrific.
Well, so yeah, I mean, like everything that you were talking about, like each decision you made seemed like a logical step to make at the time until you round the corner, and then there's the bridge pylon, and then you realize everything that you've done has just created this house of cards that's all going to come falling down now.
So
nobody got hurt though. Now it's a funny story. My
3 youngest children barely remember it, or they kind of remember it just in a lighthearted way, like, oh, wasn't that funny? We all fell out of the canoe. But my oldest son, I think he's still like afraid of rushing water and needs counseling.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I could see that.
But I look back on it, and like you said, each individual decision was just like me with a little bit of foreknowledge trying to do the right thing, but all added up, it was just 3 Mile Island. I mean, it was just a disaster. And I think if there's one lesson I could learn from all that I could take and give to myself, it was to do something with little children like that. I need to have done it once myself without them to fully understand what was required to be able to make the right decisions.
That seems like good advice. Yeah. I can get behind that. Your story. So I immediately have 2 follow-ups for your story, though.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is you said at one point that you were like the canoe was in the back and it was you and Alicia that were paddling, and you were trying to navigate the canoe into the same pylon that the tubes went under. And it seems like if you had all gone under the same one, that you would have been fine and none of this would have happened, right?
Right.
Okay, so clearly then this is Alicia's fault for not paddling hard enough.
Oh no! Don't say that. It's my fault, Josh. It's my fault.
Just we'll leave it out for speculation. Who's really at fault here? No offense to Alicia, she's a great and wonderful person, but she's got to be 80 pounds soaking wet. Like,
yeah,
she's a tiny person. You can't. Maybe you know what? This does go back to you. You can't put that kind of pressure on her.
I got to take all the blame. I've got to. This is
all right, my choice. So my second piece of feedback is like we have this bad at parenting segment that we do, and I try to come up with something like every other episode or so to talk about how I'm a bad parent because we can all do better. And like I came today with a question about, oh, how cute is my daughter? Like humble bragging about it. And then you come at me with this like legitimate PTSD, like life and death story. And like I can't even you totally story topped me. Like there's nothing I can do here. I feel like
it's a coincidence.
I feel like I need to go out and endanger the lives of my family in order to have a decent
don't do that.
Conversation next episode.
Here, let's play cactus climbing. I don't know. No, I was just here because we come out here about once a year, and I was kind of having a trip down memory lane. And I thought that would be a good one to relive for bad at parenting.
So people, don't tie your kids together before you get into a moving river.
Well, I would like to say that 2008 Ben. Let's transition to bad in English because I've got a saying here that describes 2008 Ben. So this is a good one. This is a favorite of mine from when British would good-naturedly say insulting things about each other. And so they would say that if someone was incompetent or couldn't do something, they would say he couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery. And if someone couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery, piss up, and when I heard this one, of course, I wrote it down right away. But piss up has nothing to do with urination. Piss up is a term that they mean for just a bunch of people staying around getting drunk on beer.
Okay. Honestly, I was thinking the other thing, and I think it works both ways.
Yeah. So, but if you're in a brewery and you can't get a bunch of people to stand around and get drunk, that means what would we say in English?
Like couldn't fight your way out of a paper bag, maybe?
Yeah, perfect. Just like that.
Okay.
So that's our batted English phrase of the day. Couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery. It means you're so incompetent so as to be unable to organize a simple task.
All right. Well, so I knew 2008 Ben, and I don't think you were hopelessly incompetent.
Couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery.
I don't think so. Now the other question though is, you know what a brewery is, right? And what you do at a brewery, Mister, like live by the word, and
you make beer there.
Partake of nothing delicious. Well, breweries are notorious for people drinking a lot of beer and then having to go to the bathroom, hence the piss up terminology, I thought.
Yeah.
Would you correct
me? And I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't deliberate double meaning by the British there.
A little tongue-in-cheek humor? No, the British aren't known for that.
Yeah. All right, so last week you and I had exchanged texts about something, and almost incidentally it had come out that I hadn't told you about something my family had chosen to do. So I'd like to follow up on it, because a couple episodes ago we talked about Black Lives Matters, and as a parent, I try to cultivate certain values in my children, and my daughter, who I've often struggled with knowing what motivates her and what she's keen on, showed a great degree of interest in Black Lives Matters. And so when my wife found out that there was a protest happening at the county courthouse near us, she said, let's go. It happened to be on the 4th of July, on Independence Day. So we gathered up the family and went to a Black Lives Matters protest.
Yeah, you were, like, I think I remember, I asked you, like, how you deal with people on Facebook that have vastly different opinions than you do. And you actually had sent me a couple screenshots, and it came out because one of your comments that you screenshotted and sent to me was, dude, I went to a BLM event last weekend. It was fine. And then, like, I don't know. I felt a little like, how did I not know about this? Like, we just had a whole episode about it.
I don't know. I was a little worried about like virtue signaling or something like that. So I wasn't like taking selfies and putting them out on Facebook. We just went and participated.
I see.
I wasn't like hiding my face in case the press came and took. Well, I was wearing a mask,
but you weren't there to like for the self-aggrandizement of it, and you weren't there but you were just there to show support for the movement and coincidentally your daughter.
We offered it to all of my children. 2 of my 6 decided to come. My eldest son and my eldest daughter, and it was a good experience, you know. So. We showed up, and probably about 100 people in all showed up over the course of it. We got there, and we hadn't stayed up the night before hand painting signs or anything like that. I didn't even wear the right color of attire. Apparently it was a blackout event, and I wore a yellow shirt, so I stood out like a sore thumb.
Well, I mean, you can't have blackout events right now in Phoenix. It was 114
today.
Today.
You would die of heat stroke, yeah.
You would burst into flames, I think is what would happen.
Well, if you ever say, boy, it sure is hot, someone from Arizona will appear out of thin air and tell you, you think you know about heat.
Like the Kool-Aid Man, we will come bursting through the nearest wall to talk to you about how hot it is.
This event we were at, the lady that was organizing it was a black woman who also, over the course of it, she kind of told us her story, and I found out that she was, I think, a middle school teacher in the area and was a basketball coach, and she'd grown up in the town. In the previous week, it sounded like she'd gone to a major city and attended an event there to kind of figure out what she needed to do, and then she came back and organized the event in the town. She did a good job.
Kind of scouted the big leagues and brought some of those lessons learned home.
Exactly. So we stood around and chanted things like, no justice, no peace, no racist police, or say their names, which ones? Say their names, which ones?
Yeah, and it was good challenge response nice stuff.
And there was kind of a theme of, it was the 4th of July and we were supposed to be celebrating independence, and there was this like, some people aren't free. Some people don't enjoy the same freedom as you in this country, and so, you know, instead of just celebrating, we should think about them and find out what we could do. So for about the first hour, we just stood there with our signs and chanted. For the most part, people that were walking by just waved, just said friendly things. We all stood 6 feet apart and whatever, we were doing the best we could. And, chanting our little things. Passers-by would honk their horns, little friendly, supportive beeps, or the really friendly, overbearing beeps, honk, 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 honk. Except for this one guy that pulled up, and I hate to play on the stereotypes, but pulled up in this total like redneck, tricked out pickup, and he came to stop in front of us, and then he revved his engine and made this giant black cloud of diesel smoke and sped off into the distance.
Like intentionally, like tried to like smoke.
Yeah, it was chemical warfare. It was bad.
You know, Ben, nobody has ever looked at one of those big jacked up diesel trucks and said, "Wow, look at that truck. I'll bet that person has worthwhile opinions."
I bet they have open-minded political values.
All right, so like, what was the? So that's great that you found a way to like support your daughter and then maybe get your kids a lesson about what civic values or civic responsibility.
Yeah. So afterwards, I kind of polled them to find out what they got out of it, and my daughter surprised me because I knew she cared about this and it really motivated her, but it surprised me. She was energized by it. She was excited about it, and come to find out, she had participated in something I didn't even know existed. Did you know about what happened in Tulsa with President Trump's first campaign rally?
I know that like almost nobody showed up, and it was a hilarious like undersell or something.
Yeah, so on the surface, that could just be the story, but underneath the almost nobody showed up, there was something else going on. So apparently a bunch of teenagers got together on their social media platforms, TikTok and Snapchat or whatever, and they planned to basically sabotage President Trump's rally by going into the ticketing system and reserving a whole bunch of tickets. So when the Trump campaign came out and said that over 1 million people had signed up for this event, the numbers were inflated by basically rebellious teenagers.
It was getting trolled by TikTok. That's hilarious.
Yeah, well, not only that, but I found out in the course of this that my daughter was one of the teenagers that had participated in this. I had no idea.
Oh, Ben, you're raising a counterculture rebel over there. What's going on?
I know. Well, so she reserved 2 of the tickets, and she wasn't going to volunteer the information, but it's like taking her to this BLM protest like made it okay to come clean.
That's really like I was gonna ask you like as soon as I said like you're raising some counterculture, domestic terrorist, I realized like this is Ben Rich. How counterculture could she be? And so like how many tickets did she reserve? Like I'm sure there's some kids in Texas that reserve hundreds of tickets, but she reserved 2 seats.
Yeah. So we went there, and the theme of the BLM protest ultimately became love wins. That's what we chanted. And I went with a little bit of reservation, not knowing what I would find, but wanting to support my daughter's desire and what I think is a worthy cause for an outrageous, thing, the murder of George Floyd and other blacks that are persecuted and discriminated against in this country. And I wanted to see what I could do to help. And ultimately I came away from it feeling hopeful. It was, I thought, a productive rally, if a bit sparsely attended. I didn't feel alienated by the things that they wanted to talk about and say they were in support of, and it felt like a worthwhile use of my time on the 4th of July.
You see, let me pick your brain for a second, because my wife and I have actually mentioned that. Like, we talked about it because the same protests are happening in Phoenix, and we actually asked ourselves if this is something worth taking one or both of our kids to try to just instill those lessons about, civic mindedness and social responsibility. Ultimately, we decided against it because, first of all, my kids are 5 and 8, so these lessons might be a little advanced for them. And second, I don't know, I may have mentioned this, but it's hot in Arizona.
Yeah, don't risk your life for this.
Well, and then the other thing was,
wear a yellow shirt.
Yeah, wear a yellow shirt with a big umbrella and like Mister's. No, but the last part though was I've always hesitated to like attend or like participate in rallies and stuff like this because like what's the end goal? Like I've mentioned in the podcast before, if I can't draw a clear line in my head between my actions and an outcome, I have a hard time motivating myself to take the action. So
I think about that a lot since I've heard you say that.
Well, and that makes me a Monday night quarterback when it comes to stuff like this, right? Because I'm not participating. But do you think that what was the purpose of the rally? Was it just to generate local awareness for the issues?
There's been a big question mark hanging over my head for the Black Lives Matters thing. Not because I don't think Black Lives Matters or I don't think there's problems, but I haven't heard, like you've said, a lot in the way of concrete solutions or proposals for solutions. I guess I went with the hope of being part of the solution, in that I can't just be like, well, because no one's given a clear plan, I'm not going to get involved. Maybe going and getting involved can help the plan formulate and come to fruition. Maybe I can help be part of the solution. So I was just willing to indulge in the uncertainty rather than wait for there to be certainty before I got involved.
That's probably the best argument I've heard for that. Is there's just so much unknown out there when it comes to something like that. There's the fact that I don't know anything about it. How can I make the decision whether or not my presence is going to affect anything or not? That's a good point.
So just go and see what happens.
Not in the summer, but yeah.
Luckily, it didn't break out into violence or anything like that.
Oh, that could be fun too. Another civic lesson to teach your kids while you're out there.
That would have been a completely different decision. Just yesterday, my nephew watched a man die.
Oh, heavy. Is that? Yeah. And that's not your bad at parenting?
Well, no.
Did you kill a man, Ben, in front of your nephew? Is that what happened?
My parents live right at the mouth of a canyon, and just as I was leaving my sister's house yesterday, a motorcycle, a guy on a sport bike with no helmet came speeding down the road and took a corner too fast and hit the head on the car in the opposite lane.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and my sister came on the scene of the accident as the bike was coming to a rest.
Oh.
And she had just had a friend die in a motorcycle accident, and she just kind of went into grief mode. But her teenage son was in the car with her, and he jumped out of the car and went into rescue mode. He helped pull the guy out from underneath the car. He moved the bike out of traffic, and then he comforted the driver of the car, told him it wasn't his fault and that everything was going to be okay, and called 911.
Wow. Good on your nephew.
Yeah, I was really proud of him. And you know, they both really came away from it with this kind of heavy sense of mortality and why you should wear a helmet when you ride a motorcycle.
Wow. That's one of the hard and fast rules that Nicole puts on me. Like, so you know how it is in marriage where you have like all the soft rules that you live under, where your wife will tell you, oh, you can do whatever you want. But in that tone of voice, that's like, I probably shouldn't do this. Like, that's the one hard, fast rule. Even if I joke, like, oh, I could get a motorcycle and drive around, I'd probably look pretty cool. Yeah. And shuts it down immediately. Like, nope, not a thing. That will never happen.
Yeah. And, we were thinking, we don't know anything about this guy, except for, and this will tie the BLM thing together. My daughter doesn't really have much exposure to the police. She's lived a law-abiding life. She only recently started driving. She's never even been pulled over by the cops. So she's never had what I would say is a positive interaction with a police officer ever. And so she's on TikTok and social media, and she talks about police like they're this national police force, like the SS or something like that. She calls them the system. And I'm a little bit worried. I want to help her. I want her to be civically minded, but I also don't want her to think that the police is just this big conspiracy out to extort people and be racist and suppress people. So I kind of wanted her to have positive experiences. So it was kind of odd that out of this thing, the man that was on the motorcycle was black, and the police officers that were the first on the scene to arrive and administered CPR to him were white. So it was kind of like a real life example to my daughter, who just didn't have any exposure whatsoever, that they aren't just a bunch of racist jerks.
At that point, it doesn't even really matter what the race of either side was. It was just the police doing their job, which is try to, for the most part, to protect us.
But she doesn't have any exposure to that. And I know you say race doesn't matter, but I think it's important in this instance that they didn't show up and go, oh, it's a black man, I'm not going to help. They just help because
they just did their job.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you say that she's never had a positive experience with police. At the same time, like you're saying, she's never been pulled over. She's a 16-year-old law-abiding citizen in a suburb somewhere. Like, she's probably never had a negative interaction with police either. Right.
But right now, her media stream that she's consuming is filled with negative examples.
Man, like, if that's the one lesson that you can impart to everyone, like, I try to drive this home with just everybody that I know, not just my kids, but like everybody. It's that everything exists on a bell curve. Like you hear about stuff on the news, like that's guaranteed going to be one end of the bell curve because that's what gets them the best ratings. Like, yeah, there probably are a minority of police that are out there doing these horrible, horrible things, but the vast majority of police are out there just doing the best they can in a tough job. Now, I'm not condoning the kind of stuff that happens, not like any of there is police brutality that happens. The system is unjust. There is systemic issues in our country, but most people are just people trying to get by through their day.
And while there is the really terrible examples, the extreme end of the bell curve, there's also a lot of marginal examples at the bottom quartile, or two quartiles, where there's just petty stuff happening and risk and friction, and that needs to stop too.
I agree. Like you see the funny videos about like the cops that'll stop and like shoot hoops with the local kids, and it's this fun moment. But that's a 5-second viral video, whereas one cop mouths off inappropriately to a group of kids, and that is topping the news cycle for a week.
Yeah.
So you're right. I'm not trying to minimize it. It sounds like I'm trying to minimize it, but I'm not. I'm just like, it's a bell curve.
Well, let's lighten the mood a little bit.
Please, yes.
In episode, 13, you and I had reviewed a whole bunch of intellectual properties on the Bad at Magic rating system. And at the time, I had not seen Avatar: The Last Airbender. So you gave it a rating all by yourself, and I added it to our little graphic that we made and stuff like that. And you gave it a B+ on its use of magic and called it a hard magic system. And that was pretty much it. We didn't really delve into it in depth. But since that time, it's gone from only being available on DVD to being on Netflix, and it gave it a bit of bump, and it's aware in the public consciousness, so people can go on Netflix right now and watch all 60 episodes in 3 seasons of 20 in Avatar: The Last Airbender. And so I think we need to give it the full Bad at Magic treatment.
Well, I'm going to depart from our normal procedure here, and I'm going to say now, this next segment may contain spoilers for Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No, we got to spoil something and then tell people there was going to be spoilers.
All right. How about this? People be warned, this next segment about Avatar: The Last Airbender may contain spoilers for all of the Star Wars movies.
Yes. All right. So I think we should probably start off with just a plot synopsis. And Mom, hang in there. I know you're probably not going to watch this, but we're going to tie it into life and games and other things, and it'll be great.
Okay. Yes. Anybody that's still listening, you should go watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I think, even before the plot synopsis, I want to get this out there. If you watch just one episode in isolation, if you walk into the room and your kids are watching this show and you watch 10 minutes or 5 minutes of it with them, you're going to think it's just a normal run-of-the-mill Saturday morning kids show cartoon. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. If it just your initial impression of it is just a goofy, silly, cartoony kids show that doesn't have any serious ideas. And you're right. That is so wrong.
Yes, and so radically different from any other kids show that's advertised for kids that I've ever seen is this has a running plot in that every episode builds on every previous episode. There is a story that is happening, and it is constantly moving, and they actually call back to and rely on information and plot points from previous episodes, and they just, most of the time, don't care if you saw it or not. Like, you almost have to watch it all in order.
Yeah, so it was like 2005 through 2008 when it initially came out, and that was well back before the on-demand media kind of paradigm now where you can just binge watch an entire show back to back and consume it all in chronological order. This was back when, you'd come home from school, take off your backpack, turn on Nickelodeon and catch an episode, and maybe it was sequential from the last one, but probably not. So they used to include like a little clip 1 minute, like here's what happened in previous episodes that's relevant to what's about to happen kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. That was really different, wasn't it? I think that speaks to the fact that right there, that should kind of clue you in that this isn't your average kids show. They're expecting you to consume it serially, start to finish.
Yeah. Can you imagine I don't know, Friends or Seinfeld on previous episodes of Friends, and they tell you what happened to catch you up or whatever.
Oh, yeah, it never worked. There's too many inside jokes, whatever.
Or On the last episode of Flintstones, no. Those just reset to zero every time, and you just do something else.
The standard 3-camera sitcom where something happens, but for the most part it's irrelevant, and we're going to reset from the scratch for the next episode. All right.
Yeah.
So enough of that. This show was totally different. Do you want to do the plot synopsis, or would you like me to?
Well, let me just define one idea. And I've talked about this in the past, but I want to give it a formal definition. So when I was a student teacher back when I was doing college, I had part of my student teaching in a first grade classroom with a first grade teacher who was teaching his first graders like Shakespeare and stuff like that. And one of the ideas he gave me that he was giving to first graders has stuck with me ever since then. And that was his definition of an antagonist and a protagonist. And it was a very simple definition, but I find it really clarifies when I consume media or literature or anything. And that is, an antagonist is someone who does not change, and a protagonist is someone who does change. So the antagonist exists to provoke change in the protagonist. So I like to think of characters like that in this. So there's a whole bunch of characters in Avatar, and I'm surprised how many protagonists they have. There's a ton. There's at least 6 characters that over the arc of these 60 episodes all have transformations that take place. They're all protagonists. And then everyone else around them are antagonists that are provoking the change.
That is definitely something that I want to get into as we talk about the characters. But I'm going to give a plot synopsis first.
Okay, so it's the traditional like hero's round or whatever.
Yeah, it's a hero's journey. Like if you want to boil it all down to the bottom, like I'm going to do proper nouns. People, stick with me on this. The idea is that this is set in a mythical world where some people are born with the ability to alter and move specific elements, and they call it bending. In the show, there are the 4 elements. There's earth, water, air, and fire. And so firebenders have this ability to generate fire blasts from their body and typically it's through some kind of martial arts. Like all of these people invoke these powers through some kind of martial arts stuff. Earthbenders can move earth, waterbenders can move water, and airbenders can move, you guessed it, air. Well, the idea there's also this mythos that one person in this universe can bend and has the ability to manipulate all 4 of the elements, and that person is the Avatar. And their sole purpose is to maintain the balance in this society, right? So the show starts in the first episode with the Fire Nation getting uppity. The Fire Nation is they start this invasion, this conquest. They're going to march out, and they're going to start taking over all the other nations. And the Avatar at the time is only 12 years old, and his leaders come down to him, and they've identified him, and they say, listen, you're the Avatar. Congratulations. We need you to stop the Fire Nation from invading the rest of the planet. And, he freaks out because he's 12, and he tries to run away from home. Well, things happen, and he ends up getting frozen in an iceberg, essentially frozen in carbonite for what is 100 years. He is then found 100 years later, alive in the carbonite by who are going to be the other protagonists, the 2, Waterbender and her brother, Sokka and Katara. They break him out. They find out he's the Avatar, and they start this hero's journey he needs to develop his skills and get to the point where he can help restore balance to the Earth by taking out the Fire Nation. And they do the standard thing where they're going from place to place, trying to collect a Scooby gang of friends and teachers to help them along the way. And like this sounds like a Saturday morning kids cartoon, but again, every episode builds on the previous one. They're constantly updating. The plot is constantly moving. Things change significantly. There are major points where, like after this episode, everything is different for specific reasons. And it's a kid's show with a lot of really heavy adult content. And like I brought up Star Wars at the beginning for a reason, because a lot of these things that we're going to talk about are what Star Wars should have done. Like this kid's show does specific storylines better than Star Wars ever did.
Yeah, so over the course of me watching this, I kind of dug into it, and I realized that this is like Star Wars done right. Like Appa, they're flying bison that they used to travel everywhere. That's a Millennium Falcon. Aang is Luke. Zuko is Anakin or Darth Vader. Katara is Princess Leia. Sokka is Han Solo. Toph is Chewbacca. And Iroh is like Obi-Wan Kenobi, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good, Ben. Like, I'm on board. Some of these analogies you draw, like, I'm a little sketchy on. This one's pretty good.
And it has 3 distinct books that are like the 3 movies of the trilogy, and they can have the same tone and tenor. Like the first book ends in like this triumphant defeat of the Death Star, and the second one ends in like a big setback and a huge problem, and everything's gone wrong, and then the third one ties everything up and brings it all together.
Yeah, it's very Star Warsy. And then it's just so some of the themes that are in Star Wars that we really like. I think it's fair to say that like the prequel trilogy, which is terrible, don't watch it, is like Anakin, like basically that story is Anakin's fall. And then I don't even know why I bring that up because we're not talking about that. The latest trilogy, the Disney trilogy for Star Wars, like I think the most interesting plot line that came out of that was Kylo Ren's redemption story.
Yeah.
And that was, while it was the best story, it wasn't great. Like it kind of fell to
It wasn't
pieces.
really satisfying.
No, it wasn't. It kind of fell apart for me at the end for a lot of different reasons. But I'll tell you right now that at the beginning, who we think of Avatar is going to be our main antagonist is this firebender, Prince Zuko, who is the crown prince of the Fire Nation. He's next in line for the throne. And he was exiled by his own father. Burned in the face by his own father, who was super hardcore, and that's just
scarred.
Yeah, he's got this huge scar across his eye that's just incredibly noticeable, and just told him to his face that you're worthless, and I'm giving you this impossible task. Like you've lost all your honor, you're exiled, and you can never come back until you find the Avatar. Which in the mythos of this is crazy because this Avatar has been missing for 100 years. So essentially, this father is giving his son this literally impossible task before he's allowed to come back and claim his rightful place. And Zuko starts the show just single-minded and just a jerk. Like in every sense of the word. He's mean to the people around him. He drives people away on purpose. And he has this one driving goal.
He comes from the Fire Nation, who committed this genocide against the other nations of the world they live in.
Yeah. Like he is like set up as being like he's pure bad.
He's the Darth Vader.
Yeah, he is the Kylo Ren that we all wanted. And over the course of the 3 books, he has this slow, methodic, and thoughtful and sensical change of heart. And that's the biggest thing, right? Star Wars,
it makes sense.
Yeah, Kylo Ren flipped for like the stupidest reasons. In this show, like Zuko, you can see every step that happens when he starts to change his mind. Or in this episode, he learned a lesson a little bit about other people's perspective or who he is or whatever. And not only that, but like he never flips on a dime. He struggles with it for like an entire season. And then he
spends the entire first season seeking to regain his honor down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And then in the second season, he kind of comes to question that path and then go down the right one.
But he's still, like the second season, he is struggling with it the whole time to the point where you think he's going to do the right thing. And then he doesn't. And he makes the wrong decision at the end. And then but this is the thing, and you're so disappointed in him, but it was genius from a storytelling perspective.
Oh man, it was.
Because
I love it. He had this chance where everything he wanted was delivered to him on a golden platter. Like all you have to do is just betray your friends right now, and then you will be back in the good graces of your father, and you'll have the Fire Kingdom at your feet, and everything will be good.
And and he does what any normal person would do, and he totally takes that chance.
Yeah.
But and that's the genius part, because then he spends half of the third season, like you see him in this life of luxury, everything he wants, and he's struggling with it, and he feels bad about
himself for it.
Yes, and he still has all this anger that he has to work through.
Yeah, can you imagine if Darth Vader sat around and be like, "Why did I kill all those younglings in the temple?" Like that would make sense.
That is part of why that didn't make any sense. Like in the last 10 minutes of the third movie, he's just going to be pure evil zombie. Like that's why everybody was so mad about it, because he didn't. Yeah. It doesn't make sense for people to change who they are on a dime like that. And this kids show, did a redemption arc way better than a multi-billion-dollar movie industry could.
So Aang, who seems to be the main protagonist, and mostly is, also has his own redemptive arc, but of a completely different sort. And I found it very comparable to the story of Jonah from the Old Testament. Are you familiar with this biblical story?
Vaguely. Like he was in a whale.
Yeah, most people are familiar with that part of it, but what they don't know is why. So Jonah was a prophet of God, and he was commanded by God to go prophesy to the people of Nineveh to prevent them from being destroyed in a war. So Jonah had this peaceful mission to go to these people and basically tell them to repent, and then God would protect them and prevent them from being killed in the war. And Jonah didn't like them. He was racist. He was like, I don't want to go to those people. So instead I'm going to go the complete opposite way of where God's telling me to go. And that's when he got swallowed by the whale. So at the beginning of, historically in the beginning of Avatar, Aang had this mission to bring peace. And there's all this pressure on him as a 12-year-old boy to unify and use the powers he has as the Avatar and bring peace to the world. And he went the other way.
Yeah, as just any like 12-year-old kid would. Oh, hey, by the way, kid who's in what, 4th, 5th grade? Like, we need you to, broker world peace. And you might have to kill a guy to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, and he comes from a peaceful nomadic tribe, so he's like, "Oh, that doesn't sound like a very good idea. I'm going to run away." So, and that was the same with Jonah in the Bible. And after Jonah spent 3 days in the whale and got spit out on the beach, he was like, "Well, maybe I better do what God said," and he went and saved the world, basically. So, I thought Aang was kind of like the story of Jonah from the.
I can see that. Yeah. So, Aang got frozen in the ice essentially, and then when he was discovered, like he even fought a little bit for a while after he was discovered. Like he didn't fess up to being the Avatar, even though he knew he was.
Yeah.
He kind of started finding out what had been going on.
They're like, well, wait, all the Airbenders are dead. You're the only one that's left.
Yeah, so it's probably you. We know the Avatar was an Airbender, and there aren't any anymore. Yeah, it still took him a few episodes to come around and make the decision. Okay, like let's give it a shot. Let's try. I have to do this.
Yeah, and that's another part, I think, of the brilliance of the writers of this series. Like you were talking about how it looks and feels like a kid's show. I mean, they're dealing with heavy themes here. I mean, there's war and genocide and imperialism and totalitarianism. And here we have a happy-go-lucky, lighthearted 12-year-old who doesn't want to get involved in all of that.
Well,
and yet he has to face the genocide of his entire race and somehow comes out of it without being bitter and hateful.
Yeah. I there was multiple times where I was able to watch. You said we were going to talk about it this episode, and so we resubscribed to Netflix, and then my kids had never seen it, and so we watched all 60 episodes in the 2-week time frame. Like we just finished up episode 60, like an hour before we had to sit down to record. So like it's fresh. And like there was multiple times where we would have to stop after an episode and kind of like explain kind of the deeper stuff that's going on with my kids.
Yeah.
Like my daughter's 5, like she gets a pass on all of the heavy stuff. But when I ask her like, what do you think happened? And she gives you just exactly the actions that took place on the screen. Okay, that's fine. You were paying attention.
He rode on the buffalo.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
He did that.
And then my son though, like I was making specific effort to try to like get at some of the deeper stuff with him. It's like, so what happened in this episode? It's like, oh, well, he was mad because he's trying to be good, but he's not doing a very good job. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you think made him mad about that? And like, who is he mad at? And like, just having these kind of conversations where we're picking this apart. I love
that you have these kinds of conversations with your kids. Those are good parenting moments.
Yeah, watching this kids show, right? But then...
No, just, you're trying to perceive his understanding and his comprehension.
Yeah. Well, and then but the show being the like target audience for kids, but then having this deeper stuff is such a great vehicle for it. Like, for example, Zuko, like we talked about in the first 2 seasons, is this huge jerk and just a terrible person. And then in the 3rd season, our group of heroes spends a lot of time physically in the Fire Nation, like the bad guys. And it's kind of like a Nazi Germany light. And I think it was really interesting how they introduced all this. There was like one episode where Aang, our protagonist, it's
like they're running around the Death Star wearing stormtrooper suits.
Right. Like, they stole some clothes, and then like he was mistaken for some school kid, and then like got like the truancy officers came around and hauled him back to class.
Right. And it was so brilliant to send him to their school so that he would firsthand learn what was being taught to children in the Fire Nation.
Yeah, and it was very Nazi Germany stuff. Like the lessons that they were teaching, right? The teacher at the front is like, we as the Fire Nation have an obligation to bring our superior culture and like lifestyle to these poor, forsaken people that live in the rest of the world. I'm like,
and how easy would it be to tell like your child who watch it now, when they get old enough to understand what happened in World War II, and be like, that's the same thing that was happening in Nazi Germany to kids about the Jews.
Yeah. Oh, and it's such a great way to introduce this concept. And it's like, and I was able to, at the end of that episode, be like, this is why Zuko thought he was doing the right thing. He didn't think he was the bad guy. He was taught and trained as a kid that he was right and he was the good guy. And so just this concept of like good and bad, there's the kids shows wants you to see the hard black and white of good and evil, but most of the time it's a lot more complicated and nuanced than that.
Yeah, now my kids are a full decade older than yours, and I also watch it with them, but they'd all seen it before. And maybe when they were younger, and this time around, I think they were very much consuming on a much higher and more mature level. And so, like, at the end of the first season, when they go to the Water Nation fortress, and Katara is trying to learn more about her discipline of waterbending, and she's being shunned because she's a woman, we had some really good discussions with my children about gender discrimination, and that's really what they were trying to get at in the show, and it played well. It was easy enough for a child to consume, and yet really explored some of those ideas and what it meant.
Yeah, that one that wasn't a real teachable moment yet, just because like my kids don't get gender discrimination.
Sure, like, oh, that mean guy won't let her waterbend. Okay.
Yeah, but because she's a girl, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, you're right, Carter, that doesn't make any sense.
You almost don't want to destroy that kind of innocence.
Yeah. Now, while we're talking about it with the age difference, there was one thing I do have to say about the show is, since it's episodic, they'll change the tone from episode to episode every once in a while and just have something that's a little different than the rest. So every once in a while they have like a really like kind of a horror type episode.
Oh.
Well, there's a couple I can name. Like there was one all about the bloodbending that they had, and they played up the spooky tone that people are disappearing in this forest.
Yeah,
for whatever
there
reason.
Was this witch in the moon, and
and so they just with the mise-en-scène, right? Like all the music and the tone and like the camera shots and the jump cuts and like it's there's trying to be scary.
Yeah, and you or I just watch that and eat it up. It's like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. They're paying homage to all these great horror films. But now here's the problem: is my son has a very active imagination to the point where his nightmares cause logistical problems for me. Like the first time
who else is in the bed right now?
Well, it's like the first time he comes out of his room at night and he's scared. Like, I had a bad dream. And you're like, okay, well, let's talk it through, buddy. That was just a dream. It's not real. These are just stories. It's all fine. Go back to bed. And you're like, gently talk him through it and calm him down and get him back into bed. But by the fourth time, it's like, listen, you little snot. I don't care how scared you are. You're going to go back to your bed. And I don't care if you cry until you pass out. You're going to sleep and you're going to stay in there. And maybe that's
why. Scared because of the bloodbending episode?
So the bloodbending episode got him a little bit. But in the first season, there is Aang, who, for other reasons, he is also can dabble into the spirit realm, right? There is a spirit realm that exists as a parallel universe, as analogous to the physical realm, whatever.
Yeah, it's how they give him these little vignettes where he gets tutored by the avatars of the past.
And that's probably one of my bigger complaints about the show is the existence of this whole spiritual thing, but we'll get there. Anyway, there's one where he has to go talk to an elder spirit that has all this information that he needs. And this spirit is called Cone the Face Stealer. And
Yikes.
then it's depicted as this giant centipede creature that has a head that is a face of that can change the face to whatever one of the faces that he's stolen. And like my son asked me, like he looks at me like worried, like his eyes are a little big, like, what does a face stealer mean? And I'm like, I don't know, kid, it's just a show. Let's find out. And as we're watching it, Aang is going into this cave and this monkey kind of scares him. And he's like, oh, it's just a monkey. And the monkey turns to look at Aang, and it's just this blank, like, mannequin head with no face on it. And that my son was done. Just like, nope, I'm out. We're finished. And like
we're watching the rest of this episode through a pillow.
Like curling into the fetal position, both hands over his face kind of thing.
Oh, man.
And I'm just trying to talk him down. Like I want to watch this show. This is a good show, and I know he'll like it. I'm like, kid, it's just a story. It's a cartoon. It's not real. They're just trying to make it scary for fun. Some people like that. And it's just a kid's show. And Ben, I don't know how this happened or why it worked, but my son grabbed that phrase, it's just a kid's show, like a drowning man grabbing driftwood. And from that point forward, whenever anything got a little tense or scary, like he could see him like still tense up, but he would look at my sister, or his sister, like, don't worry.
Chant his little mantra.
Yeah. Don't worry, Jane. It's just a kid's show. And like my wife looked at me like, what? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why it's working, but it's working. We're going with it.
Right. Not having any nightmares tonight.
If he did or not, I mean, that's neither here nor there. It got him through, and so good on him.
So our two main protagonists, Zuko from the Fire Nation and Aang the Avatar, are both in search of redemption. Aang wants redemption because he failed, and the Fire Nation basically, went berserk and took over the world. And Zuko wants redemption because he's been alienated his family who'd taken over the world. So they're both seeking for it. And I thought it was really interesting how at one point both of them have this desire to seek it alone. Like they reject the loving people that have surrounded them to kind of support them. For Zuko, it was his uncle Iroh, and for Aang, it was Katara and Sokka and later Toph. And say, no, I have to do this by myself. And when they try to do it by themselves, they've kind of picked the wrong way, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and I think they did a great job depicting because, like, Aang, he made that decision, and he did it for, like, one episode before he realized, you know what, I can't do it alone. I need my friends. You guys are here for me. It's great, and they all had a group hug at the end. And whereas Zuko is just from the school of hard knocks, man, and I'll tell you, like, he had to have that message just beaten into him because he just kept on trying to, like, no, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Failure after failure after failure. And just took him forever to get there.
Yeah, but these are hard things, Once Zuko joins the group, I mean, they struggle with forgiving him because he pursued them relentlessly and was violent and mean. And Katara lost her mother, and so that to her translated into a bit of racism against the Fire Nation, and she really has to come to terms with that and learn to deal with it. Sokka, he looks around at everyone around him that all has like superpowers, and he's just a regular guy, and he's got to figure out what value do I have to bring to this. Toph, she was born blind and is kind of angry at the world, and she's turned out to be real powerful, but she has to learn to rely on others. And these are important messages. So you come away from this kids show and you think about honor and dignity, your destiny, and I think most importantly, learning to forgive others and learning to rely on people that are trustworthy. And I think those are all great messages and worthwhile watch.
You know what? If we're going to talk about that specifically, like our two biggest main characters be Aang and Zuko. Aang has a pretty standard hero's journey. Like he just he has to gain wisdom and gain knowledge and gain power. Yeah, he's reluctant at first, but eventually he accepts it. He gains the mystical help, consults the father, blah blah. The whole hero's journey to a T.
Right, and in the end achieves the and then goes back to where he came from, triumphant.
Right, but I'm going to go out and say that Aang's storyline, honestly, is much less interesting to me than Zuko's is, because Aang is just this straight line trajectory from start to finish. He has a goal from the beginning. He has some setbacks along the way, but it's clear where he wants to get to. Zuko, on the other hand, has to do a complete 180, and that character transformation that happens, and that's the thing. Like, it's not.
It is really engrossing.
Yeah, it's a complete, like, he has to come to terms with the fact that everything that he's known forever may be wrong, that his original motivations may be wrong, that the thing that he is trying so desperately to do, that to achieve the things that he thinks he wants, first of all, that the things he wants might be wrong, and that the way he's trying to achieve them may be wrong. And he has this, like you said, Uncle Iroh is one of my favorite characters in the show. And I was always playing him up to my kids like, this is the guy, kids. This is the guy you listen to right here. If you ever have this old man dispensing wisdom, listen.
Most of the time, he just looks like a silly, old man that doesn't take anything serious.
Yeah. And, and he comes across that way. And I told my son a couple of times, like, oh, Uncle Iroh's so funny. I'm like, you think he's funny, but he's the bomb. Like, he's hardcore. Like, and it took that episode where he was like manacled and like chained all up in like in a circle, and he still kicked the crap out of like 4 guys or something. Yeah. For it to like sink in, like, Uncle Iroh knows what he's talking about. But
yeah, he's somebody with nothing left to prove. But he also learned the hard way. He lost his son because of his own lust for power, and that was when he had his own transformation. So by the time the series starts, he's already transformed. His heart is softened. He desires peace, and now he wants to impart that to Zuko. And Zuko, like you said, he is a hard learner. He's got to learn his lessons the hard way. And
again, the storytelling is so good because the way that you learn all these things, like at the beginning, you just have Zuko and Iroh, and like they basically outline that Zuko's trying to find the Avatar, and Iroh's there to help him. And you don't know why Iroh's there to help him until much, much, much later. You find out Zuko was banished from the Fire Nation to find the Avatar, and Iroh, who is the brother of the Fire Lord, the head of the nation, self-exiled with his nephew just to try to teach him a lesson, just to try to, like, you don't, like, the whole time Iroh was beating this drum, like, you don't have to do this. Like, you can decide for yourself. And just trying to impart this lesson of what I think is one of the most important lessons that anybody can learn is agency. It's like you have control.
You can determine your own destiny.
Yes, you have control over your life. You can make these decisions. People can't determine this for you. And just like the fact that this guy sacrificed, everything that he had to try to teach this to this ungrateful, bratty kid, it's so great. And then at the end, so Zuko betrays Iroh, like we talked about. Like, he's offered this opportunity, like he's kind of learning these lessons.
His uncle, who's been nothing but forgiving and understanding and patient with him.
And you get the sense, like, through this whole arc that that Zuko's coming around and Zuko's finally starting to make the right decisions. And then,
he just tells his uncle off.
And he totally,
Screw you, uncle.
And he turns on him. He throws his uncle under the bus. He sides with the other side. Iroh is arrested as a result of it. And that's part of why Zuko feels so bad about it. But then, like, they get separated for a long time. And then Zuko actually has this legitimate change of heart. And then there's this episode where they meet up again. And Zuko's dreading it because he knows that Iroh is going to be furious with him for turning on him at the last moment and just making his life, just terrible. And Iroh just as Zuko's pouring his heart out and like, just, I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. Like, I know you're furious with me. And Iroh turns and just hugs him, and he's got tears coming down his face. He's like, I was never angry with you. I was sad that you had lost your way. And it's just like, my kids are like, oh, that's nice. And I'm over here welling up like, that's just so beautiful, man.
Yeah. And how great is it that this, children's cartoon on Nickelodeon can have that kind of emotional impact?
More emotional impact than the Star Wars movies did.
Yeah.
Killing me, Smalls.
Yeah. Well, let's tie a bow on it. So, obviously, we recommend this to anybody that hasn't watched it, even though we spoiled the heck out of it. If you've listened to it this long, go ahead and give it a shot. You'll laugh, because, oh man, did I laugh so much. There is no television series I've watched in the last 10 years I can think of that has made me laugh as much as this one. Because the characters are endeared to you, and then they just do silly, funny things that play off of things that have happened that you've learned from watching it, and inside jokes and teasing each other about the past, and it's fantastic. in the last season, there's this one episode they have where there's this acting troupe that reenacts the all the protagonists' life, and they go to this theater and sit in the back of the theater and watch their entire life reenacted on stage, and it's brilliant, and it just made me laugh so hard. It's fantastic.
That was a cool episode for a lot of reasons. Not just because, like you said, they're basically recapped every episode up before that just to catch you back up to speed, but also the fact that the protagonists, our main characters, are watching like kind of cut out caricatures of themselves. And then that was a good episode. Like the one I want to recommend as being very funny is I told my kids when we were watching it, because I remembered this from the first time. In the first season, it's this it becomes a running gag that they're constantly being captured by one group or another. Like either the Fire Nation outpost catches them, or these Earth Nation warriors catch up with them and they're trespassing. They get captured or whatever, and they get captured so many. I told my son the first time, they get captured a lot, and he goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Just watch. They get captured a lot." And it's like every other episode in the first season, they get captured by somebody. Up so much so to the point where the writers acknowledge it in an episode where the standard, everybody's sleeping, and then something happens, and then somebody gets shaken awake. It's like, "Oh, wake up. This is happening." And then the guy comes to Sokka, our comedy relief, comes awake. He's like, "What's happening? Are we being captured again?"
That's great. Yeah. So, Avatar: Last Airbender, Bad Magic Podcast, 2 thumbs up, highly recommended.
Highly recommended. It's on Netflix now, and actually, this is interesting. Is I told my son, it's like, there are other Avatar. He was sad. This is the first time. Oh, let's watch Avatar. I'm like, we can't, buddy. We watched the whole thing, and he's kind of sad. There's no more Avatar. And they're like, well, actually, hang on a second, because I did a quick Google search, because
Yeah.
We have the sum total of human knowledge at our
You
fingertips.
never have to
now.
wonder anything.
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly. There's a lot of content that has been created around in the Avatar universe, right? So some of it is like manga, anime, or like comic book style, where Aang is like an older gentleman and things are happening in the world. But there's also another TV show that they did about the next Avatar, because the Avatar is reincarnated every time the last Avatar dies, a new Avatar is born. And so the next Avatar is a girl named Korra, a Waterbender, and there is a show, or the Legend of Korra, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I haven't watched it.
And neither have I. But it comes to Netflix on like somewhere halfway through August or something.
All right.
Yeah,
my kids have watched it and they don't recommend it. But
oh, really? Yeah. Interesting. Way to spoil it for me. But
sorry,
I plan on watching.
Maybe you'll have a better experience.
They'll have a better experience with low expectations. I plan on watching it with the kids when it comes out halfway through August. I'll let you know.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so let's talk about next time. So next time's our 26th episode, which means we have been doing the Bad and Magic podcast every 2 weeks for an entire year.
Like I said, I didn't get you anything. I'm sorry.
Well, we'll do a couple of things to commemorate the occasion. We'll make some memorabilia available to our loyal listeners, and maybe just do a state of the podcast and talk about where we're at.
Oh, that'll be fun. My fellow Bad at Magic parents, let's talk about how terrible our kids are. And
dear Muggles,
dear Muggles, let's talk about English idioms.
And why we hate Star Wars and love it at the same time.
And why we love and hate Star Wars. There you go. Okay, I'm in. The only other thing that I have to recommend, like maybe not for next time, but for future episodes, there's a show on Hulu that called Palm Springs by Andy Samberg. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's like a Groundhog Day clone. And as you know, Groundhog Day is my favorite movie.
Totally. So you know more about it than I did when my wife sat down and said, hey, I want to watch this movie with you. I'm like, okay. And I saw it was Andy Samberg, and it was a Hulu exclusive, so I had very low expectations. Like, I was on my phone for like the first 15, 20 minutes, just moosing around, looking on Reddit or whatever. By the end of it, I was on the edge of my seat, my eyes all big like puppy dogs, and just like biting my nails like, but what's going to happen to Ron? And so, anyway, It is a spiritual successor to Groundhog Day.
Say no more, fam. I'm in.
Yes, go.
I will get a trial Hulu memberships to check this out.
It is definitely worth a free trial Hulu membership. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think the cinematic concept of Groundhog Day is underutilized, and every time it does, it's to great effect. There was the Tom Cruise sci-fi war epic Edge of Tomorrow, great and then movie. There was the teen horror flick Happy Death Day, all of which I think used it to great success. None of course, as great as the classic Groundhog Day, but still, it's a good concept.
I don't think I've ever seen Happy Death Day.
You should check it out.
Yeah,
it's not. Expect the same kind of experience you would watching Scream, but it's good.
I'm not big on horror movies, Ben, because my son inherited his penchant for nightmares from this guy.
Okay, I'll tell you the conceit. In Happy Death Day, it's her birthday, and she gets murdered. And then she wakes up again, and it's her birthday again.
Oh, and she knows she's going to get murdered?
Yes.
So it's all about counter-murder?
She's got to figure it out, because the person that murders her is wearing a mask.
So she's trying to solve her own murder in this time loop where she gets killed.
Yes.
Ugh, that's gross.
It's fun because she is like self-absorbed college snob.
Oh, good. So she's the kind of person that deserves to be murdered. Is that what you're saying, Ben?
Right. Yes, and she has to come to terms with that.
Oh, okay.
That's her character arc.
Interesting. Okay, I'll give it a shot. You sold me.
Yeah. All right, and I'll check out Palm Springs.
Palm Springs. Good movie.
All right. Well, thanks to our listeners. Thanks for hanging with us for 25 episodes. Thanks for joining the Bad and Magic podcast and supporting us. Thanks for sharing with your friends and joining in the discussion. And we'll talk to you next time on episode 26.
Yeah, joining the discussion on your social media platform of choice. We have the Facebook page that Ben so lovingly curates. We have discussion boards on Reddit. If you love everything that we do, recommend us to a friend. If you love us so much that you just pine for the opportunity to show your love and support, go on our Patreon. And you can show us love there.